Unfinished Business Television fans. Show your love for all things retro and movie magic by grabbing some awesome gear from 80sts.com. Your go-to spot for the best nostalgic t-shirts from your favorite movies, TV shows, and pop culture classics. Use promo code UBTV at checkout to save on your order and support Unfinished Business Television. While you're at it, relive the classics or the memories. Shop now at 80sts.com with code UBTV.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Unfinished Business Television. I am your host, Jeff Galashaw at Unfinished B1. By the hat, you can tell the movie Eddington had an impression on me. With me, as always, is co-host, friend, tech support, and the man who keeps the lights on here, AJ Epics of Andre Joseph of AJ Epics Production. It's early, guys.
Yeah, it's the holidays. And to our followers, be sure to support our new sponsor, 80stees.com. Use the promo code UBTV to get a special discount.
Yes. I actually got something from them and forgot to wear it on this episode. Next episode, I promise, though. This is the film review episode. So we're going to talk about 6 recent or new releases and tell you how, not necessarily, we give you a review, but also a kind of evaluation or commentary on the films. Now, first up, we have to talk, even though this movie did not reach theaters, it is out there haunting you. It is The Hand That Rocks the Cradle on Hulu. This is a remake, of course, of what I would consider a classic thriller that starred Rebecca De Mornay and Annabella Sciorra about a woman who takes on a nanny who slowly tries to take over her life, take over her family, and she has her nefarious reasons. Now, this remake starring Mary Elizabeth Winstead and Makia Monroe doesn't follow the original plot for plot. I understand you want to make, your own kind of entity and thing, but it takes away because no sugarcoating. This film sucks. I'm sorry. I really did not like this movie. Um, Now it's pretty much the same story at heart, but Makia Monroe has this convoluted reason for trying to take down Mary Elizabeth Winstead. As usual, the husband is useless, but there's no husband seduction in this one, as Makia Monroe is pretty much lesbian in this film. And you have Martin Starr in the Julianne Moore supporting role where you're just like, with him, okay, with Julianne Moore, it was more of a surprise. Her ultimate, what ultimately happens to her character. But this guy kind of knows what this girl is capable of. And it's just like, hey, let's talk it out first. I'm not going to tell the cops. It is like, come on. Like, the problem with this film is it just has no reason to be remade. I could understand if you had a different way of presenting the story or, making it, even more campy or suspenseful, but they don't do anything with this. It's not scary or suspenseful throughout. And you would think the characters would recognize this by a mile away. And I guess it's sort of like my thing with anything. If you're going to remake or reboot, at least have a reason or an original vision for doing it. Not just, hey, we like the premise. We want to do something like that. Then this is nothing but a Lifetime movie that is a little bit R-rated for language and I guess some violence because it's not even that gory. Now, Andre, what did you think of The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, the remake? And
Well, the original, I'm not going to say it's a sacred cow. It's a part of the whole 90s staple of everybody was trying to make the next Fatal Attraction. But that said, I think it worked because you had Curtis Hanson as director, you had a solid script by Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silver, which didn't just go completely unconventional, right?
Hmm.
The whole thing starts with Annabella Sciorra getting sexually assaulted by her gynecologist, and then the shit that goes down with him when he's exposed. And then Rebecca De Mornay, being the rich wife, decides to get revenge by being this babysitter simply to ruin Annabella Sciorra's life to get with Matt McCoy and have the relationship with the
My cool.
daughter, you know, have the breastfeeding of the baby. And, that stuff was disturbing for 1992. And you had Ernie Hudson in there, which I'm not surprised they cut that particular part out of this movie, this remake, because obviously it probably would have offended people today given our climate. But the thing is, you're right. This movie has absolutely no reason to exist. I mean, the beats are there, but it's way different in, as you said before, this convoluted backstory that they try to make subversive by making you think it's the girl watching her family's home get burned down and, oh, she's going to get revenge. We don't know why she wants revenge until you realize, oh, she and Mary Elizabeth Winstead are connected in the past because they're like, spoiler alert, surrogate sisters. Like, what? We're going to make that a thing? And you mentioned the lesbian thing, but they do hint, at least in one scene, that she's like having this flirtatious thing with the husband, when she's like looking down at her boobs are a little bit exposed there. And that goes nowhere. Like the dude is a doofus, and I do not buy this guy who looks like he's some. I'm not even going to get racist here, but he just looks like a stereotypical construction worker that's a little bit out of shape. I don't see how he would be attracted, or Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who's a beauty, being attracted to that beast of a man, and not like a good-looking beast either, just like working class beast. Uh, and yeah, the ending you could predict a mile away because they make a whole
Hmm.
big to do about that stop sign at the road that they think is too dangerous. Like, oh, we need a stop sign here, whatever. Um, and just yeah, the music sucks. I hated the fucking music in this movie. This score that's trying to be Trent Reznor or like all these noises that sucked ass big time. They're one of the worst soundtracks this year. And overall, it doesn't add anything new to make it compelling or exciting. And there have been so many, like 8 million lifetime knockoffs of that original film, that this really isn't doing anything that makes it stand out or unique. Other than the fact that the girl's a lesbian. And then they play up the fact that she's got this friend and they're doing it in the shed and she's watching. Like, this is, and that ridiculous ending where, okay, they take her out, they take out Monica Monroe, and now we got to have this setup. Oh, the daughter's now all like influenced. No recommendation for me, motherfucker.
Yeah, I have no recommendation for this film. And they seem to miss one of the reasons why the first film worked. It was because, yes, it has that campy flavor, but everything was done with such like pristine style that when the other elements like breastfeeding the baby, this doctor who's like molesting his patients, these things just come out of nowhere that they're just so shocking. And with this film, you expect almost every turn or twist that comes up so that there's nothing really here. So that is why both have to give a no recommendation to the
Oh,
hand
one
that.
more thing.
Okay, go ahead.
Part that made me roll my eyes is when they do the background check and they find out that her real name is Rebecca. I'm like, give me a break.
Well, I was upset there was no cameos by the
None. At least
original
Matt
two stars.
McCoy, have him. He's not doing anything.
Hey, I'm sure autograph shows he is working. Okay, but yes. It has no link to the original except for apparently that Rebecca. And the only sex scene it has is a brief guest lesbian scene that is a blink and you miss it. And like I said, the cast deserved better. The audience deserved better. It's just disappointing all around. And next, just in time for the holidays, we're going to talk about a family film by the name of Karate Kid Legends. The sequel no one needed, but I guess it helps link Cobra Kai and the original Karate Kid to the further ongoing adventures of these Karate Kid movies. Like, okay, Look, you've seen the Karate Kid. You've seen any product of the Karate Kid. You know the story of this film. Kid who's like sworn off of fighting and karate because his older brother died doing it, and he promised his mother. He comes to the United States. He like meets a girl who he likes, and of course, her ex just happens to be the karate champion of town, and is just generally a dick, and who works for this dojo master who's also a part-time gangster. And so I guess that's his enforcer of sorts. But now that he's dating this girl, now the karate master has it in for this kid, and he don't want to get his ass kicked every day. So instead of fighting, he tries to train his ex boxer employer, who's the girl's father, played by Joshua Jackson, to, I guess, be able to do both, like kickbox, basically. And then, of course, something happens, and then the kid's like, nah, now I gotta fight. And, just in time, his grandfather, played by Jackie Chan, comes to visit to train him, but also Danielson is in town to also help teach the Miyagi. I don't remember Jackie Chan's character's name, but
Mr.
basically,
Han.
yeah. So basically, this is the plot of the movie. Um, look, I'm going to give this film the benefit of the doubt. I feel like this is a film more for your kids to get into Karate Kid movies because obviously they're not going back to the Jaden Smith version. So this is for that next generation, and I guess they want to be culturally appropriate. So they give you this. I think it's a fine family film. It's entertaining enough, but again, listen to how I just described the plot of this movie. That's where you're gonna start rolling your eyes and be like, "Oh my, this is ridiculous." And also, I don't understand this girl liked this dude who kicked ass, and now she doesn't. Now she likes this kid who's peaceful but can defend himself, but then is mad because he starts fighting. Is this just the writers being like, well, those teenage girls, you know? So, and they give him a nerdy best friend who's barely in the plot. Half the time I kept wondering, who is this kid? And why is he here? So
Like the Spanish kid from the first one.
I guess, well, yeah, the one who like ditches him after he gets his ass kicked and you
Yeah, that
never see him again.
dickhead.
Yeah, he's not even at like when Daniel wins at the end. He's not even there then. I'm like, but this nerd kid sticks with him throughout for some reason. I guess it's his only friend. So I'm going to give it surprisingly a mild recommendation. Look, if you're a film buff, yeah, there's no reason for you to watch this. But again, if you're looking for some kind of family film to watch with your kids and they've never seen Karate Kid and they refuse to watch what they will probably refer to as an oldie with Ralph Macchio, give them this. They should be entertained. I give it a mild recommendation. Andre, what did you think of this movie?
This is one of those moments where it's like the Charlie Sheen doc when Sean Penn pulls out the knife and it looks like he's going to cut himself, but he's just trying to make some stupid statement. We're going to talk about that later. But anyway, this movie was completely ill conceived right from the start. I personally always felt that because Cobra Kai was so successful, that the logical next step was to do a Cobra Kai movie that could have been considered Karate Kid Part 5, if you want to count the Hilary Swank installment. And, and I heard these rumors, yeah, they're doing a movie, but the Cobra Kai guys are not involved, and that bothered me. And then the strikes ended, and I think you were with me at that comedy show with our friend Brittany Carney when I was looking on my phone, like, oh, they just announced that Ralph Macchio and Jackie Chan are going to be in this movie together. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. We're going to merge the two worlds, and I'm not explaining how they're doing it. And everything that I was reading up until the release of the film was that the Cobra Kai guys, again, were not involved, but they were consulting with the filmmakers in terms of making sure there were no contradictions with what they established on the show. I don't think these filmmakers listen because there are so many inconsistencies between the show, the legacy, and the mythology that was already established in the previous Karate Kid films and what these guys did here. And listen, there's these nitpicks that again, I don't think they bring the movie down, but for like the hardcore fans, they say that, oh, Miyagi and Daniel went to Okinawa in 1986. No, they went to Okinawa in the summer of 85 after he won the tournament 6 months earlier. And also the fact that they even try to shoehorn this idea that the summer after the tournament, that Mr. Han went to the dojo to sleep over at Miyagi's dojo. Like, and even the logic of that doesn't make any sense. But again, those are like the nerdy nitpicks. The movie's biggest problem is that they try to sell you on this idea that this kid is a great student until his brother dies and he gives up karate just as his mother decides she's got a new job and she's moving to New York. And then we're thinking from the TV spots that Jackie Chan's going to show up because he's got to help this kid get his confidence. But then he realizes he needs a balance. So, oh, I remember there was this kid that Mr. Miyagi told me about in Reseda. I'm going to go bring him in. So that's how Daniel comes in and the whole two branches, one tree thing comes about. But yes, what the TV spots and trailers don't tell you is that a large chunk of this movie is this ridiculous subplot with Joshua Jackson with the bullshit New York City accent, being a guy that's in trouble with the mob. He owns a pizza parlor, and he decides, hey, kid, why don't you trade me for some fight so I could get out of debt? This is a totally different movie injected into a Karate Kid film, and it makes no sense to the rest of the picture. And so, and that third act, once Daniel comes in, it's rushed. It is rushed as shit to try to get to the big finale at the end. The only good things I will say, Ben Wang is very good. I think he has a future in the business. I love Ming Na Wang. And I love the fact there's no Jaden Smith. There's not even a reference to him other than the jacket on, jacket off bit during the training scenes in the beginning. And the mid-credit scene, I think, is the only thing that's worthwhile to watch. And at least that put a smile on my face. But it was like too little too late by then. And yeah, I think in the end, same thing. I think if you don't know the other movies or if you don't watch Cobra Kai, but you love karate, it's a mild recommendation. I don't think it's like it's not a careless movie in that regard. There is quality to it, but if you're a hardcore fan of Karate Kid, you will be sorely disappointed.
Yeah, I feel like maybe that was the input was that mid-credit sequence that the Cobra Kai filmmakers gave. But I'm kind of glad the Cobra Kai filmmakers didn't really maybe put their tutelage or make this film because by the end of the series, it showed that they had run out of ideas.
Yeah.
They were putting out this ridiculous. Maybe they need a few years to recharge. Trust me, I'm sure they will be put on Netflix that because I know they probably have future plans.
They said they want to continue at some point.
Exactly. And William Zabaka and Ralph Macchio, no offense, are not getting any younger. So, soon they're going to need body doubles, in these action sequences. But like I said, I think it's a fine family film as long as you don't take it too seriously as an adult. Because remember, this is more for kids. So that is our review of Karate Kid Legends currently on Netflix. Next, we have John Candy, I Like Me. Now, this is a documentary all about John Candy, his life, his career. They interview most of his co-stars and his kids. Um, this is pretty much a no-brainer. If you love John Candy, you're gonna love this documentary because you actually it's heartwarming to know the way he was on screen was the way he was in life. He was a nice guy, he was smart, he was witty. I think the most shocking thing in the documentary is just how mean reporters were to his face about like his weight and everything. And and it showed strength of character how he responded to those. He might have taken it to heart, but he always had a witty response to it. And I mean, now I've read a biography on John Candy before, so most of this is not new, but I mean, I wish they would have maybe showcased maybe some of his like earlier work, like his role in The Silent Partner, even though it wasn't big, something like that. Or like Judge Reinhold, I think he was on Rich Eisen's podcast recently and told the story about like how he kept a bathtub full of beer because he didn't know what a dry county was, and he doesn't consider beer alcohol. Like, I wish there were a few more stories like that behind the productions, but I understand Colin Hanks, wanted to more focus on the man rather than the career highlights that we all know. And you even get Bill Murray in here, giving his 2 cents, co-starred in Stripes. I wish they would have like done a little bit more with Steve Martin or talked about his collaborations with John Hughes, I don't remember. Did they ever mention like how he wanted to be like German when they offered him Ghostbusters to
No, they
play
didn't
the.
even talk about that. That was like, we'll get to my review, but there were things that were left out.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a nice, genial documentary that, for if you don't know too much about him, this will give you, a kind of a look into his life that maybe you didn't know. I mean, again, I'm just nitpicking here. I also wish they would have talked about like, the last films before he died, how he was trying to be more behind the camera, but they seem more focused on like talking about his Canadian, hockey league more than anything, rather than like, hey, what was it, Hostage for a Day, and what went on with that, or his last film, what was it, Wagons East?
Yeah, Wagons East.
They don't talk about that at all. It's just like, oh, he just passes away. So I recommend the film. Um, I mean, as a John Candy fan, I probably highly recommend the film, but it's those nitpicks that keep it from being like the ultimate experience. Andre, what did you think of John Candy? I Like Me.
Well, I loved it. It was emotional, and there's so many of those SCTV skits I never saw that just had me howling. It just goes to show you just how much of this guy was so much of his heart was put onto the screen through his comedy and through the times when he kind of dabbled into a little bit of drama. I've always been one that said, even when we did our Armed and Dangerous deep dive, that this guy could have won an Oscar if he was still alive. I think he was on that path. And so yeah, there's so many of these great stories. They do highlight the hits like Spaceballs, Splash, Uncle Buck, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, all the ones that are obviously well known. I definitely felt the only true downside are the things they left out. So they did talk about with Stripes, and I wrote about it for Collider, the whole thing with the mud wrestling scene, how uncomfortable he was, and how he tried to get through it. So I was glad they highlighted that stuff. I was also, maybe the revelation that I had watching it, if I learned anything new, was just how obsessed he was with death, given his father's passing, and then how affected he was when John Belushi passed away. And it felt as if, like, I don't know how long I'm going to be around, even though he wasn't a druggie, but just because of his weight and, just the hereditary things in his family, he was constantly paranoid daily with those things. And I don't blame him for that. But the things that they left out, you mentioned they didn't talk about when he was offered Ghostbusters. They even had storyboards of him as Louis Tully that ultimately, he had different ideas and he suggested Rick Moranis. But other things they didn't get into, the silent partner, I agree. They should have highlighted that. They glossed over the last half of his career. I would have loved to see them talk about Cool Runnings and even like Only the Lonely, because that was like
Oh
his first
yes,
real
I
romantic
love that
leading
movie.
part. Yeah, and he was fantastic in it. And that movie failing really did affect him emotionally. They don't even talk about something Chris Columbus brought up on a podcast about how he and John Hughes had a falling out because of the fact that he was offered a percentage of the profits for Home Alone. He didn't want it because he figured, oh, I'm going to keep working with John and we'll be fine. I'm just doing a favor for him, like he would do for everybody. He was always doing favors. But then when the movie made money, he tried to see if he could get a little bit of that, and they wouldn't give it to him. And he spent the whole Only the Lonely shoot just pissed off and angry. And that's why he never worked with John Hughes again, allegedly, according to Chris Columbus. So I wish they could have talked about that. I don't mind that they don't talk about, like, say, hot to trot or,
Hey,
Canadian bacon.
leave
Like,
those movies alone. Hot to trot, hard to find too.
that's on Tubi, by the way.
Oh, I might have to check that out. I like me a Dabney Coleman performance.
I wanted to
And
see that as a kid too because of Bobcat Goldie.
well, I can
But yeah,
understand. Mm,
yeah,
no, go
but
ahead. Mm.
and then the only other thing besides like what they glossed over was the fact that there were certain interviews that they didn't get. I mean, it was great they got Bill. I was shocked they got him. Where's Ron Howard, who's like, one of the
Mm.
best buddies of Tom Hanks and all these people? Where's he? Where's well, they got Aykroyd, they got yeah, Martin
Well, you're
Short.
not going to be able to get Rick Moranis. And
I was surprised. I was very surprised he wasn't in it. I mean, of all things, this guy, I can understand him turning down movies. You're gonna turn down something where you're gonna talk about one of your friends, unless they had a falling out we don't know about.
I mean, they had what's his Dave Thomas. He's not
Yeah,
exactly the easiest to get to interview. I mean, and I like that they gave proper respect to Summer Rental. Because that
yes.
is a film I really love that he started. But what would you give it? Would you recommend it or would you highly recommend it?
I recommend it just like you do. I would give it more of a recommendation. I think if it was a deeper dive into the films, in
I
addition
agree.
to how they
Mm.
covered it. But I think for like a dummy's account of John Candy's life and career, this is fine.
Um, well, I guess since Dan Aykroyd was being interviewed, they couldn't ask. So let's go back. Was it Nothing But Trouble?
Oh yeah, another one that they glossed over.
Come on, you got Dan Aykroyd. You can't talk badly about it. So it's like we can't really say what we want to about it. So it's like, yeah, let's just have Dan on the show.
And at
on
least they
the,
showed a little clip of Brewster's Millions. It wasn't much though.
I mean, I'd rather that was one that they wanted to skip over. I would have been fine personally. I'm like, put more Armed and Dangerous than if you're gonna skip over that.
You know what? That's another one I wish they would have talked about how he didn't want to call McRyan a bitch.
And where was Eugene Levy?
They did skip over him, didn't they?
Yeah, I'm like all
My
the
God.
Canadians they skipped. It's like except for what Catherine O'Hara, she was like really the only one from SCTV and Dave Thomas. Other than that, I mean, I know a few have passed on, like Joe Flaherty, but I was just like, but you can find Martin Short. He's everywhere.
Also, I love the Conan O'Brien story with the college.
Well, I mean, anytime Conan O'Brien's in anything and tells a story from his past, it's gold.
Better than
Okay,
Jay
so
Leno.
yeah, exactly. If Jay Leno was here, I'd be like, "What was he on the set of Collision Course? What?" Or the day you filmed for was it Major League Two? you know. Anyway, look. Obviously, I'm not the biggest Jay Leno fan, but to me, Conan O'Brien is gold always. So I'm biased. So we move from one documentary to another documentary with Netflix recent being Eddie. I'll let you go first for this review, and then I will put in my 2 cents. Mm.
I was quite surprised how fast this came out, even though they've been working on this now since he did his first comeback to Saturday Night Live a few years ago.
Damn.
Um, yeah, I think my anticipation was somewhat high, but not exact.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there's a lot of course, they gloss over all the big highlights with him on Saturday Night Live doing 48 Hours, Trade Places, Beverly Hills Cop, all the people that he ever worked with, his friends, all pretty much highlighting his genius. A lot of emphasis on how he was breaking barriers all throughout his early career. Where it was like only Richard Pryor was making movies that were crossing boundaries, and then he went further. Like he started to run in a way that everybody else that came behind him started to get their flowers from there. And I think that could be warranted or even debated at the same time.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I mean, and there was some surprises, him talking about buying the cemeteries for Red
Oh yes.
Fox and for Rick James, which I had heard about for years, but him talking about it, talking about when Spade made that shot of him on Saturday Night Live and how he felt about that, how he felt about losing the Oscar after doing Norbit. Um, I didn't know he was friends with Val Young, the singer, that she was part of his whole crew. Uh, along with Rick James, because Rick James,
Well, come on. You knew the Rick James part,
yeah.
though.
And I like the part about Charlie and how emotional he got. That's like as dark as this thing gets. Which again, so there's all this good stuff in there that makes you laugh and chuckle, and obviously seeing his lifestyle, which makes you realize why it'd be hard for him to ever go back to stand up because he simply is too clean, doesn't go out anywhere. And there's his whole house is flawless. His family is
Oh,
almost
Jesus.
flawless.
His
Like,
house. And
yeah, the guy's made more enough money. He never has to leave the house. But there is so much they don't tap into because it's a fluff piece. It felt as if his publicist got involved and he said, this has to be all positive. We're not going to get into any negative shit. We're not going to talk about his divorces. We're not going to talk about the incident with the transvestite in Hollywood. We're not going to talk about his fight, which I was shocked they got John Landis for this, to be
yes.
completely honest, and made no mention of that fight on Coming to America, which was mind-boggling to me.
And Beverly Hills Cop 3.
Right. They even mentioned Cop 3 at all. They just completely passed that over. Um, and I know there were some other like smaller isolated incidents, but yeah, a lot of the dark stuff they just completely ignored, and I wish they could have done even stuff like he had tensions with Paramount during the 90s before he went to Universal because he didn't like the material that they were giving him. And so I was disappointed he didn't really get into those things, but I loved hearing the stories. The one that really had me howling, the Yul Brynner story at Studio 54, where he was trying to entice Eddie to sleep with his wife that night. And that picture of him looking at him like, what? That to me was the greatest thing ever. And the puppets of Richard Pryor and Bill Cosby. And obviously, they ragged the shit out of Cosby here.
Oh,
So
damn.
this would I would say mild recommendation in comparison to the John Candy one because I think it's again you're getting the greatest hits, but it's not really compelling, and the last half is really just the behind the scenes of his SNL return. I wanted a little bit more, and I think this is a movie that honestly, if he wasn't being interviewed for it, I would have preferred, like, I don't know, maybe not Spike Lee, but maybe like Nelson George, like he did with the Thriller documentary for Michael Jackson, an outsider doing that perspective and really getting into all that stuff. And then you can bring in like Arsenio and others giving their take.
Um, I have a lot to say about this documentary.
Go
Like, look,
ahead.
I knew it was going to be a fluff piece because if you say it was they've been following him for so long, then this should have been like the Schwarzenegger, warts and all, and him being honest. But I knew soon as you told me it was one part, I was like, this is gonna be like the Stallone one. They're gonna only
Exactly.
they're only gonna go butt so deep before, we're not gonna talk about certain things. Like he talks about his brother, but he never brings up, oh, but I didn't go to the funeral. And things like that. Um, and my problem with this was they're interviewing a lot of people who either briefly worked with him or you didn't even know they were really friends. Like Seinfeld. Why is he so much in this documentary? Like last time I saw it, like I'm sure, they both came up in the 80s, so they know each other, but really other than coffee and cars, whatever, getting coffee and cars, it was like, is this just a Netflix thing where it's like we only want to interview people who are in our types of movies?
Yeah,
He
not to interrupt, but like, where's Paul Reiser? Where's Walter Hill, Nick Nolte, Martin Brest? Where are all Judge Reinhold? These guys are still with us. Where are they?
no. We get instead Pete Davidson, who worked on
Yeah,
what one film.
and a bad one at that.
Exactly. One that I'm sure even Eddie's probably like, yeah, I don't want to talk about that one. Where was like I remember when they did the roast on Spike TV of Eddie Murphy, and like where's the Keenan Ivory Wayans? Where's the Robert Townsends? People who actually knew him. And then the thing that killed me, like Chris Rock should have been in the Seinfeld position because he's helped him most of his career. So he should be giving like more of an insider knowledge. And it was more like Chris Rock's here for a cameo. And then Keenan? Keenan? of all people. And why did you feel like you should be the cool guy wearing fucking shades? Who the fuck are you? You are the least talented person on fucking Saturday Night Live. And it's an insult when Eddie hosted. You're on the stage with all these comedic legends. Yes, I'm including Kevin Hart a little, but still, who the hell are you? And you with the shades and the chain. When did you become a rapper, Keenan? Get the fuck out. Okay, let me calm down. But
Did he piss off a lot of people that just didn't want to talk about him?
I mean, what can he do to Keenan Ivory Wayans? He has money. I know
He's
him and
originally
Robert.
got "I'm gonna get you sucking me." He suggested it to him.
I know, but I know him and Robert Townsend might have
Yeah.
their little beef. But I mean, like you said, they don't talk about the ex-wives, but show all the kids. And does that lady live in the house, Val Avery?
It felt like it. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I know the house is that big that she could, but I'm like, why? I'm like, look, that house, that is practically a hotel. That is how big that house is a
Yeah.
coliseum. Like
Mhm.
Kevin Hart did a comedy special from the basement of his own house. Eddie, if he ever did stand up, could definitely do it from his house.
It was close to MC Hammer's house the way it looked with all the fountains.
Exactly. And where was Martin Lawrence? His daughter
Yeah.
is married to Eddie's son. You couldn't get an interview with him? I mean, obviously they're not going to get into the whole Brett Ratner thing,
Yeah. I
but
would
you
have
could
liked to
even,
talk about that.
yeah, what about Brian Robbins? you know, they could have talked about Norbit since they spend some time talking about that movie. And not to mention,
Mhm.
Marlon Wayans always loves to bring Eddie Murphy up. Eddie couldn't put him in an interview if they can't get Keenan. So it was just like, again, it was like half cocked. I appreciate it for what it was. Like this is the closest glimpse you're going to get because we all know Eddie probably is never going to write an autobiography. But
Mhm.
I appreciated it for what it was. And I mean, obviously, I think he should write a book on Harlem Nights because I feel like there is so
Yeah.
much history there, even though the movie's not great. But I feel like all the behind the scene footage and experiences would be more entertaining than the movie at all, you know?
And that's another thing too. I wish he would have talked more about the issues Richard Pryor had with him because he obviously talked about a little bit in the Seinfeld thing, but that would have been a nice little deep dive there that he idolized him while making the movie, not realizing he was talking all this shit behind him.
And the thing that I'm always going to say this, probably till the day I die. Um, I think Eddie Murphy is still one of the funniest human beings in the planet. He can he could just make up stuff on the spot that will make you laugh. And even his Saturday Night Live episode was one of the better episodes of that series, even though realistically the skits don't work if it was anybody but him. But okay, I think now every documentary on celebrity must have at least one person who smokes through their interview. Because Dave Chappelle, damn, you couldn't put it down for a second, the cigarette, and it looks like it's affecting his health because his eyes look all yellowy, and he's like, I remember Dave Chappelle sounding young. Now he sounds like a pack a day smoker.
Yeah,
It's
remember when he
like
was like ripped and in shape? He looks like he lost that physique.
smoking, And I guess he tours a little more than he used to. I mean, I still think, yes, he's also one of the greats, more storytelling in his stand up. Though, he has to get off that one subject that keeps getting him in trouble because now it's playing like a broken record, like just accept, do jokes. But anyway, I would give it a mild recommendation. I mean, I give it stronger recommendation than Karate Kid Legends, but I guess because I know the subject more, I just wanted more from a documentary instead of a puff piece. So for our next movie, another documentary, we're going to talk about The Perfect Neighbor. I think this is a must see, because of the injustice that went on in this documentary. It's basically about a woman who moves into this neighborhood, and this is a neighborhood full of minority and lots of kids who, they're rambunctious, but they're not doing anything wrong. And she keeps calling the cops on these kids for being on her property, which she claims is like kind of the little pathways and the street. And this documentary is all shown from police footage, body cam footage, and at police stations. And eventually something happens, and are taken through the process of her being arrested, being questioned, charged, everything, and the aftermath. And I think this is a very powerful documentary that should be getting more notice and buzz. I don't know if it's because it's on Netflix and they always have these kind of docudramas on. Is that the reason that it's like kind of like, it's a Netflix thing? But I really thought this was powerful and shows the injustice that goes on, but just also kind of gets you into the mindset of this person and kind of their prejudice and racism. Because what it, when you move someplace, you know the neighborhood or you're introduced to the neighborhood. So why would you move there if you know that it's going to be filled with kids, and especially if you don't like minorities? That made no sense. And the cops keep telling her this is not your property. Where her property is. So I'm like, I just didn't get it. And then uh when she's being interrogated and the cops are arresting her, and she's like, no, no. She refuses, and how patient they are with her. It was like ridiculous. Um, yeah, this if out of all the films we talk about, this is the movie I would most highly recommend people watch. How did you feel about The Perfect Neighbor? Mm.
I don't think I've been this angry since the 2024 election watching anything on TV. They really had that effect on me, and that's why I also too highly recommend it. Um, I don't think I've ever seen a documentary before that only relied heavily on body cam footage, surveillance footage from the interrogation room, and very little bit of anecdotes from people. There's like voiceovers and things later. But this was just a horrible, horrible injustice all around. I could definitely say that I could almost relate in certain situations of people that are just fucking crazy, have a bias, and they simply just like to point fingers for no other reason than to just do it. And this was like the ultimate Karen, this woman that unfortunately took this young kid's life senselessly. And just the sad aspect of it, again, this is one of those stories that, because our media is so consumed with the big headlines, this is one that just kind of like fell under the cracks that we didn't know about. And it's one of the reasons why I did my movie dismissal time. Like, there's this shit that's going on in America that nobody is really talking enough about because they think it's too woke. It's too much of a sensitive topic. People just want to be happy and make their money. No, you have to address these things. And just this is the perfect example of how the justice system is so unfairly treating minority people. Because you damn well know, Jeff, that if it was a black woman that was resisting to be handcuffed in that interrogation room, they wouldn't be walking out of that room on their own power, and they just
Nope.
let this woman just continue to badger them until finally she just gave up. But I mean, I'm not condoning, and I'm not saying cops should go and do that kind of brutality, but it
Mhm.
just goes to show you that they were just, slapping on the wrist, giving her warnings more than once. There had to be a point where those cops should have turned around and said, okay, enough is enough. One more time, we're going to arrest you for making a false statement, or something along those lines. But that's not what happened here. And I think that's why this documentary had to be made. This wasn't just another like, you know, white person killing a black person and then getting away with it. Thankfully, the jury got it right on that case. But that woman had so many problems, and I really did come out of it. And how angry I got was to the point of saying that this woman should be getting the death penalty for what she did. I don't care if she was mentally ill. That's just honestly how I felt deep down. Like, I just never felt that angry that I wanted to see somebody really get destroyed for doing something so horrible. And yeah, it breaks me up talking about it because it's such an angry subject.
Yeah, I mean, you see that the woman's child blames herself for
Oh my god, that was so
His
heartbreaking.
mother. Exactly. And now has to live the rest of their life feeling that way. What's going to happen to her kids? And again, the woman coming to her house wasn't even violent. She just confronted her about banging on the door and she shot her through the door multiple times. So it was like so cowardly. I'm like, you called the cops on them all the time. This time you decide all of a sudden you're going to take the law into your own hands? It's just ridiculous. And unfortunately, but I mean, I want people to see this for all of Trump and his bullshit DEI saying that there's no racism out there so people can see for themselves evidence of it. And how many times we keep giving certain people instances to basically be in the wrong, but nothing happens to them. And then it just culminates in what can happen.
I always think about with Higher Learning, the ending scene when Omar Epps confronts Michael Rappaport, and then the campus security comes and they
Yeah.
start beating down on Omar Epps, even though it was Rappaport that was shooting up the campus. And then when Rappaport pulls out the gun, they're like, "It's okay. Don't worry about it. We care. We
Exactly.
understand." Exactly the same situation right here.
That's one of the strong points of higher learning. And unfortunately, it's the truth. And it still goes on to this day. And unfortunately, these injustices keep happening. Luckily, she's in jail so far, and hopefully stays that way. But yeah, it's just a heartbreaker. But I still highly recommend this documentary to everyone who hasn't seen it. It's definitely a must see. And I guess, kind of on a lighter note, we're going to go to our final film. And this one's a feature, guys. So it's not like the all documentary show. We take a look at Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein or Frankenstein, depending how you pronounce it, starring Oscar Isaac, Jacob Elordi, Mia Goth, Christoph Waltz, and Charles Dance. I will let you start off this review. What did you think of Netflix's Frankenstein?
Liked it better than the Kenneth Branagh version, to be quite honest.
Okay, and
Yeah, no, I mean, Guillermo del Toro, I think, is a highly talented filmmaker who comes up with these wild visions. And I love the makeup that they did for Frankenstein. I like that the narrative kind of goes back and forth. And Oscar Isaac, it's okay. I'm not gonna say he was perfect, but he does a respectable job. Alordi wasn't bad, and given that he had to be under the makeup and the little bit of CGI they had to do with him, I thought he did a fantastic job. And Christoph Waltz, they pull back on him a lot, if you
thank
notice.
God.
Yeah, there's no twinkle in the eye there. It's just give a real performance, Christoph. Don't go into big monologues. Don't try to ham it up. Just be an actor, and that's what he does. He bores you. Um,
Okay, thank you. It's at least somebody else notices.
and there's some pretty cool action scenes. That whole bit with the wolves, and then the later scene. Well, I think it was at the beginning with the boat when he's lifting that and attacking some of the guys on there. I thought that was really well done. Um, yeah, I think it's just a little long. That's the only issue that I have with it. I think this could have been maybe a half hour shorter than it was. Otherwise, I thought it was fine. I give it a mild recommendation.
Okay, Frankenstein. I guess every generation needs their own version because we keep remaking this. I have my problems with Kenneth Branagh's version. I like it. I just feel like the second half is rushed, and then he tries to throw in Bride of Frankenstein in there too. Um, with this film, beautiful film, well directed. I like I said, I like the two perspectives. I like the action, and this is definitely a film I would highly recommend if you can see it on the big screen rather than watching it at home on a television screen, so you can get all the beautiful artwork, the costumes, the makeup. But Guillermo del Toro, I feel like is suffering from the Tim Burton disease. Make more originals. Please stop doing things that you're into from growing up, remaking it in your own vision. I mean, I like the film. I give it I'll even give it a recommendation. But I'm just tired of seeing him keep remaking stuff instead of original projects. Because I think the film is beautiful. I think it suffers sort of like how Nosferatu suffers with our friend Eric Cohen says, it feels like a museum piece. It's beautiful to look at. Do you feel anything? No. And that is my problem with this film. And like, it's great filmmaking, but by the end, I don't really feel anything. It was like it was fun to watch. It was entertaining. I love all the details, but I just don't feel anything about this film. And maybe that was the intention. Maybe this is just supposed to be entertainment because we all know the tale. We've seen it done or read the tale and all have our own visions of how it's done. And like I said, I think it was entertaining. But I give it a recommendation, but I can't say I loved it like I really wanted to. And like I said, Guillermo del Toro, great director. I don't feel like there's many duds in his filmography, and I'm not going to count this as one. But I just felt it kind of lacking. I wanted more from it. And like I said, Oscar Isaac, he does what he's supposed to do. Jacob Elordi, again, nobody surprises me here with like, oh my god, they're so good. You know, Christoph Waltz he doesn't ham it up as normal, though his toupee does. But and I guess that assistant was supposed to be kind of his Igor in this. So, because I always feel like Igor does not get it shouted out in any of these movies, as I know was not in the original tale. So, like I said, I think I recommend it. I think if somebody watches it, I don't think they'll be disappointed, but I just can't. I'm not head over heels for it. I kind of in my mind, since Francis Ford Coppola did his Dracula, I kind of wish he would have done a Frankenstein. I know he produced Kenneth Branagh's version, but I feel like if Francis Ford Coppola did it, we wouldn't have a main actor who's directing and writing who feels the need to have so many shirtless scenes and paint himself as the kind of the hero above all else. And then, bring his mistress as the co-star. But again, that's gossip. I'm just going by what the tale is. And again, I don't mind Kenneth Branagh's version. There's a step up. It's not as indulgent. And I recommend it to people. So that is my review of Frankenstein. Hopefully, we bring you another episode before the holidays. But if not, happy holidays. But before you go, we always have plenty of unfinished business. But I have to ask you, have you seen Shelby Oaks? If not, why not? Because it's fucking awesome. Andre, do you have a recommendation for the people?
Yes. Have you seen the series Mr. Scorsese? If not, why not? Because it's fucking awesome.
And we will see you next time, hopefully before 2026.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.
If you like this review, please be sure to like and hit subscribe to be alerted to new episodes in the future.